Okay, so can everyone see that? Okay, I can't really see your faces. I can see Yasmin, so you can speak for the
Oh,
group with
that's good. That's good.
your facial expressions. So yeah, cool. It's the last week of another cohort. Awesome. It's always super like bittersweet, you know. But as Yasmin said, this is far from the end. It's been great to meet you all. I've talked to a whole bunch of you kind of separately about a whole bunch of different things now. I'm always up for just chatting through what you're doing, or if there's something you think CodeBase can help with, just give me a shout. But I thought I have to apologize to Yasmin because I mean when she first suggested I did this talk, it was going to I said like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and it just grown arms and legs, and it's a bit sort of indulgent, I think. So it does last a bit longer than expected. It's about 25 minutes or so, but I wanted to cover as much of the funding landscape as I possibly could to kind of give you the best start in that world. I also promised Yasmin that I would come up with a better title for it than Getting Cash to Do the Thing, but I just ran out of creative energy. So I'll take some suggestions on that by the end. If you think there's something better I could call it. And yeah, as Yasmin said, like just feel free to ask questions, disagree with what I'm saying. I can't see the chat, but again, I'm sure Yasmin will keep me right on that. There's very little objective truth in this world, and that's true of all of the sessions. If you just disagree and you think there's a better way of doing things, like I'm all ears. So, have I done? There we go. Cool. I even get my little pointer. That's awesome. So yeah, this talk's gonna have 3 parts to it. We'll do a little bit of a recap, mostly about what Stephen was talking about at the start of the course, about what success means. Cover off a little bit of kind of investment buzzwords, because I don't think we've done that yet, and I think it's important. Just from after Hilda's talk, I think it's really, really important that we actually kind of go through this stuff. I'll take a bit of a broad look at what funding is currently available for folks, and we'll finish up with some kind of actionable stuff that you can do to actually get going with your funding journey. And hopefully, Danae and Gerv and Anna will all kind of either back me up or give better advice on that. So yeah. So this shouldn't be new, I don't think. Stephen talked about this in the first session, and I think it's been a common thread throughout the course. So I think there were also gazelles mentioned. Oh no, camels were mentioned. But so there's also gazelles and a whole menagerie of animals that you can aspire to be in the startup world. I don't think that these labels are actually very important. Someone came up with unicorns, whatever, like 10, 20 years ago, and then it just kind of stuck. And ever since, we've been kind of trying to replicate that in different ways. People rarely fit into one category of company type, and people rarely stay the same type of company throughout their lifespan. You'll probably find yourself sitting somewhere between the two of these, or doing something completely different, which is totally fine. And yeah, I mean, so Sahil, like, I love this picture of Sahil. He's like so young and fresh-faced, and like startups just age you massively over a short space of time. He was on that unicorn sort of journey. He was backed by a venture capital firm called Kleiner Perkins, who are just unicorns through and through, and he said, I don't want to do this anymore for a whole bunch of reasons. And he said that he wants to build something different. And Gumroad is a huge success story in the world of anti-growth, pro-revenue companies. So yeah, like don't believe that this is a decision that you make right now. And yeah, I think Stephen used these 2 examples. So Farfetch and Samara. Both awesome companies, both doing 2 very cool things in the world of fashion. So Farfetch is obviously huge, with over 1,000 employees, and I guess you have to ask yourself which of these can you imagine yourself running. I think I'm going to guess for most people in here right now it's more on the right-hand side of the screen. Tell me if that's incorrect. If you're wanting to build a crazy high growth unicorn, let me know. both are awesome. Both are just very different stories. But I think it's important, no matter what you're planning on doing, to think about what the funding looks like from this early stage. So yeah, let's look at how a unicorn grows in terms of funding. So this is a little bit of demystification on investment. So this is one way that a high growth company might get money. They don't necessarily always follow this. In fact, Farfetch didn't. I'll come back to that. But loosely speaking, they would get, it used to be that you just got some seed funding and it was all very simple, and you got seed funding and then you started growing. And now there's a pre-seed round and a seed extension, just to add an extra bit of confusion. Then after that, you're in the world of Series A, Series B, Series C, which are a lot more money. So in the millions, if not tens or hundreds of millions. So the important bit to bear in mind from this screen, and I apologize, this slide got messier and messier as I played around with it more and more, so it's a bit of a, yeah, I'm not a designer, sorry, is the Series A moment. So that's the kind of pivotal moment in startups' lives. That's when product market fit is assumed to have happened. Yasmin, has product market fit been explained? Yes, cool, we good?
Yeah. Yes, I think we have covered it, yeah.
You know what, I'll just a quick recap, I guess. So it's, you understand what your product is and you understand who your customers are. To give that some kind of hard, numbers, in the world of SaaS, of software as a service, I mean, having a recurring revenue every year of $500,000, that's around about where product market fit happens. And you understand that you have something that the world wants. Everything before that is kind of seed investment. Everything after that is growth. And it's all venture capital driven. So Farfetch with this, I actually couldn't find any information about their kind of seed round, but I assume they must have had one. But they raised $4.5 million at Series A, and then 18 at Series B, then 60 at Series C, and then it just gets up and up and up until you're in the hundreds of millions. And so they grew very, very quickly. FanDuel, Jim Newbury's company, his old company, grew in a very similar way. But the important thing to take away from this is what the endpoint is. So once you start taking investment especially from venture capitalists, they're looking for an exit. And that may be obvious to some of you, but I think it's really important that it's stated. So an exit means either that you list publicly, you do an IPO, or you are sold to another company. And it's really, really important that you understand that, because once investors get on board, especially venture capitalists, your motivations are completely changed. It's no longer about building, strictly revenue and making sure you're building a sustainable business. It's about getting them their money back. So just understand that it just changes your worldview a little bit. So contrast this with zebras. So, I mean, funding for zebras it's kind of a non-point, because chiefly zebras are funded by customers. They're more of a traditional business where you're not looking for an investor to come on board, give you money. You want customers paying you because you've made something that they actually want. And it's not to say that zebras don't actually take any funding, but it's just assumed that they would take less. I kind of wanted to do these two slides together because it's the venture capital journey is really, really well understood. It's just this, like, if you want to build a high growth Farfetch type company, it's so well mapped out. You can just do that. There's loads of resources on it. If you're building a zebra, like, this is an emerging movement. Like, people don't have a roadmap for it. So it's a little bit murkier, but I think it's also maybe a bit more interesting. So yeah, I think it's really important to reflect right now on the stuff that Yasmin was just talking about, what you're trying to build, and if you even need money to build it. I mean, if you can get customers to pay you for the thing, isn't that better? Sure, but then also you might need some money to build it in the first place, and it's a bit of a catch-22. But yeah, have a reflect on that. And I guess before I move on, because I don't really talk about venture capital anymore for the rest of this talk, it's maybe quite an important sort of non-well-kept secret from the venture capital world that there's actually too much of it right now, and there's not enough startups to invest in. So it's actually a really good time to try and grow a high growth company, because there's very few people actually trying to do it. So if you have an idea that you think could be huge, there's so many people out there who are willing to write large checks to help you do it, but it's just making sure that you're solving a problem that's big enough for them to justify those checks. So yeah, that's the recap bit over, and a little bit about investment. But I think what I hope is most interesting to you today is getting that first bit of funding, because I think that's where many of you are at. I know some of you have raised a bit of money before or got some grant funding, but there's so many different types of funding that you can use to get started. And these options here are all assuming that you actually want money to start, that you don't want to just go straight to customers. But I thought I would take some time to go through each of these and kind of talk about the benefits and disadvantages. So yeah, grant funding, the 3 Fs, if you can put a guess in the chat as to what the 3 Fs are between the next sort of few minutes. There's loans, accelerators, and angels, and they all have different ways of approaching them and kind of different viewpoints. So I'll jump into grant funding, because I think this is where many many companies in CodeBase start with a bit of grant funding, and I think many people on Creative Bridge, it will appeal as well. So the truth is, it can be a bit of a slog. Like, if anyone here has filled in an application form for a grant before, like, they're long, they're quite painful sometimes, but the truth is that you can get a whole bunch of money for not giving up any of your company at all, which is really, really, hugely valuable, because any other form of private funding, you're going to be giving up equity. There's so many places you can get grant funding from. So, I mean, creative informatics obviously is a huge funder of many companies in Edinburgh right now, and they'll be talking in a little bit. But there's also Scottish Enterprise, Innovate UK. So Louis got some funding from the Prince's Trust last week, which, I mean, that's just awesome. That's a huge bit of success, because it's not simple to actually get this money, but once you do it, once you understand what motivates them, it suddenly gets a lot easier. I think my one takeaway for grant funding is just to that top line, be bold. I think it's very easy to not see yourselves as one of the sort of better applicants in these things, but just understand that even by calculating your TAM and thinking about what your MVP is, that puts you ahead of 90% of the competition. So if you've done this course, you are truly way ahead of the competition. There's so many people out there who have so much less to offer than all of you, but they are very confident, and trying to get a little bit of that confidence is really, really important. And yeah, so finally, and the wee guy peeking out the bottom, it's really, really easy to just become a person who applies for grants your entire life. Because if you get 100 grand here and 20 grand there and yada yada yada, it's very simple to just kind of get addicted and pay your bills, but you never actually really build anything that people want. So call it a grantpreneur. There's many examples of it in CodeBase and beyond. It's a nice lifestyle, but you're not really actually doing anything. So try to avoid that if you can. So 3 Fs, friends, family, and fools. If anyone guessed that, congratulations. So this is true of so many companies in CodeBase and the companies that we meet up and down the country. They get their first bit of funding from mum and dad, or their friends, or we'll come back to who the fools are in a little bit. But the truth is, this does really highlight the privilege that many startups come from. That they have close contacts who can just give them 10 grand or whatever to just try and get their idea off the ground. Yasmin actually told me that she was on a call last week with Jim for a company down in Newcastle, giving them some support. And I think Jim suggested, are there any friends or family that you could hit up for some money? And the people said, well, no, we're refugees. We have, very few contacts in this country. And it's just, the world, it's a world apart from many startups who are just given that bit of money to get themselves going. But there are downsides to getting money from your friends and family. So, it is risky. If you've ever lent that slightly flaky friend a tenner, then you'll have had a sort of small sample of what that is like. Having someone give you 50 grand or, however much money, even if it's, a couple of grand to get your company started, it can have huge lasting damaging effects on your relationship. If the company fails, which it very possibly will, or if you want to take it in a different direction and they want to maintain some sort of control of it, huge things that can happen that will potentially ruin a relationship with close friends and family. And also, this money can, a bit like grant money, make you a little bit soft. If you're just getting some money to kind of be an entrepreneur for doing nothing, where's the motivation? There's a little bit of startups that need to fight and need to actually get customers on board to pay the bills. And if you're just being given some money from the bank of mom and dad, it's it can really kind of demotivate you to actually build a thing. And yeah, don't forget that also if you're the one dipping into your finances to pay for your startup, then it is entirely possible that you are the fool in this situation. If you're burning through your savings, then just be aware that you may never get that money back. I'll talk a bit more about fools. It plays into angel investors, who we'll come back to. So actually, this was called loans on the earlier slide, but debt finance is what we like to call it. Just don't do it. It's a very simple slide. You are at a stage where it's too risky. When you're building a company, there's at this point, you're just starting out. There's no guarantee of any future, of customers, of making money. They will inevitably ask you to put down your personal assets as collateral, which you just don't want to do. Do not take loans to start startups. They have their place later on in the startup growth cycle. They can make a lot of sense once you have customers, and if you need a bit of money to keep going for a while, totally. But yeah, right now, don't take loans. So accelerators. This is probably one of the best options if you can get on them. So accelerators, they're a bit like Creative Bridge, but just a bit more involved. So I've put a few on the right there. Y Combinator is probably the most famous and successful globally. They created or helped create companies like Dropbox and Airbnb and Reddit, and you name a company, and they've been through it. Techstars and Seedcamp are two of the biggest in the UK, and Seed House are based in Edinburgh locally. So nice to have the local connection with them. I think something quite interesting, post-COVID or during COVID, I guess, we're not post yet. Many of these accelerators have stopped being so geographically specific. So before, you'd have to go to London to do Seedcamp or go to California to do Y Combinator, but many of them are beginning to say, well, we can't travel, we want to keep doing what we do, so let's just do it all online, which is kind of cool for us, based here in Scotland. You also get vertical specific accelerators, which are worth looking for. So I think Chris talked about the retail accelerator that he went on, but if you have a Google, you'll find fashion accelerators, you'll find design accelerators, you name it, there's something for everyone. But I would say the one thing to look for is transparency. So the sign of a good accelerator is that it has lots of information on its website for everyone to read. So for instance, if you go to Seedcamp's website, I think it says they will give you 150 grand and take 6.5% equity. And it's just like, boom, you know what's happening there. And they'll list all of the benefits that you'll get alongside that. I would be warier of places that aren't so transparent. Not to say don't go with them or talk to them, but it's kind of a sign of maturity in an accelerator that they really know what they're doing. And yeah, do take a look at previous cohorts as well. See what other companies have been on there. You know, if you look at an accelerator and it's all like, I don't know, blockchain, enterprise, SaaS software, and that's just not what you're building, then just don't go with them, because that's not your thing. Yeah. So, and angels. This is the last of the early funding bits. So angels are just rich people, to be honest. They want to give money to startups. We're in a really good situation in Edinburgh because Skyscanner sold 2 years ago, probably 3 years ago now, for close to £1.5 billion. And what that means is you have probably a couple of hundred new millionaires walking around Edinburgh, you know, who just have suddenly found themselves very rich. Some of them are probably multi-millionaires. And they've all got knowledge of building a tech scale up. So they've all actually, you know, walked the walk as well as talking the talk. And I think they're all kind of interested in, well, not all of them, but many of them are interested in building the tech community in Edinburgh. So these are the kind of people that might be interesting to talk to. I think it's really important to understand their motivations though, because it's not always as pure and sort of helpful. You know, the word angel, they're meant to be kind of very supportive and, you know, beneficial to you, but I don't think that's always the case. It's really important to, so I think there was a question from Hugo before the talk about EIS, which is the Enterprise Investment Scheme. And then you also have the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. And basically these are things that allow angels to give you a load of money, reap the rewards if your company is successful. And if your company fails, they can write it off as a tax deduction, and they get like 80 or 90% of their money back. So it's a government scheme to encourage them to put their money back into the economy. So for many of them, it's not risk-free, but, you know, very, very low risk. It's important to understand what they want out of your business. Like, do they want to be in control of it? Do they want to sit on the board? How involved are they? That's the difference between smart and dumb money. So smart money wants to come in and help you build the business, you know, in a very practical way. Dumb money just wants to give you money and say, you're smarter than me, you build the thing. Many angels think that they're one and are the other, but it's good just kind of setting that out from the start. And I mean, for many angels, it's like building a joint, investing in a startup is almost like a kind of sort of midlife crisis, or like a kind of second marriage. Like, many of them have built a big company before and they've made money, and they're just like, this is all I know how to do, but I don't want to start my own company. So they're just like, oh, well, okay, I guess I'll join a cool startup. So yeah, Hugo had a couple of questions about angels, which I'll cover off here quickly. So red flags of what to look out for. So lack of experience in the tech sector or in your sector is a huge one. Scotland has a long history of people making lots of money in the world of oil and the world of property. And a lot of these folks have heard that tech is cool and they want to invest in tech startups with their expertise. But the truth is, it doesn't really map to building a tech company. So, you know, be wary of folks who want to come in with no tech experience if they want to have control of the company. You don't need to give investors board seats or anything like that. Like, I mean, so Seedcamp, in fact, in their FAQs, say they will not take a board seat. Startups don't really need boards. You just talk to other startups. Like, and if an investor comes on and says, I want to take a board seat and have, control, then just be kind of wary of that, unless you think there's a huge benefit they can bring to the company. And in terms of actually what they want in terms of money, they're the same as venture capitalists. They're just after an exit. So what normally happens is one of two situations, assuming that the company grows and is successful. Either when the company exits, is bought by another company, the angel will get some more money than they put in. There's very famous examples of the angel investors who put in like 50p into Uber and then got back like just tens of millions or whatever. Or what happens more often is they get bought out around about Series A. So the investors, they'll get not a huge return, but enough that they can tell people that they're a successful investor. And then the bigger companies, the bigger venture capitalist firms come along and say, right, we'll take over from here. So yeah.
Ollie, just so you've got about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Wow, time really flies. Okay, crap. Okay, I'll hurry through this. So yeah, next, after this initial bit of funding, there's a whole bunch of other different things you can do. So if you want to get into the world of venture capital, just read this book, The Secrets of Sand Hill Road. There's also crowdfunding. I don't know if people remember this. This person raised like 50 grand to make a potato salad.
Sorry, your slide hasn't moved on.
Oh, I'm getting an error noise. There we go.
There you go.
Sorry, thank you. So yeah, this book here, top left, if you want to get into venture capital, just read it. It's a really simple introduction. The potato salad was a crowdfunded thing, but most crowdfunding doesn't look like that these days. But it's a great way to kind of grow your company and do some marketing. And then these bottom two are the kind of the new people to the world of funding. So Exeter Community isn't even a real thing yet. It's a kind of work in progress by Colorado University. And it is basically, you can sell your company to the community that you support, to be like CodeBase selling itself to its tenants, really, really interesting there. And the bottom right one is Indie VC, who are, you can tell, pretty anti-unicorn. Sahil is actually a scout for them, but they want to invest in companies and help them build their revenue. So not that high growth, build revenue, and then they do a revenue share instead of hoping for an exit. So last part, I think. This is a problem with having 2 keyboards in front of me. Okay, cool. So yeah, this is some really practical stuff on just how you actually meet investors. I'm definitely going to go a little bit over, Yasmin, I'm sorry.
No problem.
So yeah, first and foremost, if you want to actually find these folks, angels or whoever, just joining Create a Bridge is frankly the best first step. We're well connected to these people, so just give us a shout. I've already started connecting a couple of you to some folks. So, and just get more involved in any other stuff that goes on at CodeBase. So talk to startups as well. Have a look and see if there's startups raising money near us in Edinburgh or further afield. There's a website called Crunchbase where you can just Google what investment has been raised by what startups. They'll, if you find one that is of interest to you, just approach them. And lastly, so investors are always speaking at events, like they love talking at events. So just, connect with them afterwards and have a chat with them. And yeah, when you approach them, so ideally a warm introduction is the best way to do it. So that's, one of us introducing them, say, or, just trying to find, it's like join the dots, try and find someone who can connect you to them. But also, if not, I wrote a blog post, I think I probably shared it already, about cold emails. Like investors are totally fine with that, just write to them. First impressions are super important, don't believe that you've only got one shot. Like it's not like a kind of Dragon's Den type thing where you talk to them once and that's it, you're only one chance. And they love decks, or do they? I'll give you 10 seconds just to read these tweets while I have a sip of tea. It's good tea. So there's a lot of confusion right now in what you should actually send to investors. But truth be told, right now, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation, but a deck is just a great, simple storytelling device. You've all created them now, and it's just a thing that investors love to see. So they will never begrudge you sending through a deck. So don't worry about recording a video or whatever. And yeah, it's not a one-off meeting. It's not like Dragon's Den. You're building a relationship with them. So this is from an article called Investors Invest in Lines, Not Dots. So really, when an investor meets you, they want to meet you again in like 3 months or 6 months, and they're going to be thinking about your progress, and they are going to be kind of judging you on whether or not you're going up and to the right in their estimation. Keep a spreadsheet. Danae will probably talk about that. Keep track of everyone you've met, yeah, remember that it's always relationship building. Investors do say no. The ones on the left are what they might say to you. The stuff on the right is what they might actually be thinking. Just remember that they're humans. They have their own motivations again. It might not be that they dislike your product or what you're trying to do, but they might have just had a shitty day. They're fallible humans. And if you're looking at an investor in San Francisco, all they care about is like your team and your TAM. Are you solving a big enough problem, and are you the people to solve it? If you talk to an investor in London or Berlin, they might be trying to do something a bit more rounded, a bit more groovy and kind of zebra-y. So yeah. And lastly, the final bit of investment is when you get a term sheet. So a term sheet is the legal document that says, we will give you some funding, we will take some of your company. There are so many things that can go wrong with term sheets, from inexperienced investors and inexperienced founders. Once you're at this stage, my only advice is just to give us a shout, and we'll help you have a look at it and have a think about it. We've seen so many great companies ruined by giving away too much equity or signing a clause they didn't really understand about non-dilutable equity. And it's really important to get this stuff right, and don't assume that the investor knows what they're doing either. And yeah, just more broadly, like that's what CodeBase is all about. Like if you have any questions at all, not about investment, about whatever it is that's causing you concern, like we've got a full community of people who are just willing to help. So as Yasmin said, if this isn't the end, just get in touch, like send me an email, tweet me if I don't respond to the email in good time. But yeah, I hope that helps you understand a little bit about the funding landscape, and I hope that wasn't too ridiculously over time. Oh God, it was. I'm so sorry, Yasmin.